Hello and welcome to today's tutorial in setting up and managing your products and variants inside of your Shopify store. I'm going to be walking you through the process of setting up your first product, managing your product variants, and publishing it to your store. First, we're going to be adding a new product to your store. So on the left-hand side of Shopify, you're going to go to Products, and then once that's loaded, you're going to head to the top right corner and select Add Product. Once it's loaded, we're going to go through step by step of each input. So first, the title. So this is just the name of the product. You can be slightly descriptive in this too. So let's take an example of classic white t-shirt. Now in the description, you want to be very detailed with this. So whether it's certain things about the quality, the way it's made, the fit, anything like that, you want to make sure this information is added here unless you have other drop downs on the product page. Now for this, I'm going to be showing you how to use the Shopify AI feature for this, as we are just making up a product in this case, but do feel free to add in your own description and make sure it is in your tone of voice that aligns with your brand. So to do this with AI, I'm going to click on the generate text button here. I'm going to add in the product name and just click generate. And once it's generated, I'm going to keep this from the description. We're going to head down to the media section. Now in your media section, you're going to want to feature the product in a few different ways. So whether that be your studio photos, more lifestyle photos, or up close product detail photos. Now it depends what the product is, but I'd suggest having a mix of these because you want to make sure the customer sees these in all different lights or angles so they get a good idea of the product, its quality, or the way their logo might be embroidered on there, or the stitching, anything like that. Each product will be different, but make sure your images do showcase each of these elements. So once you've got your images, you're just going to drag these in to add media there. And these images are just from Unsplash for this reference. I don't have all the different close-ups and everything for this case. But once the images are loaded in, you can then drag these around. It depends on the order, and you'll often want to keep the order consistent across all of your products, as this looks great when you're viewing the products in a collection feed, for instance. You can have the same consistency of whether it's a studio image first, a close-up, then a lifestyle picture. You want to make sure it's consistent. So let's just take this image here, and you can see how we can then drag that over, and we can reorder with drag and drop. Once you've got those sorted, we're going to head down to pricing. So inside of pricing, we have our price and compare at price. Now your price is going to be your ordinary price. So let's just say we sell this t-shirt for $22. Now the compare at price is when we have a sale. So if we want this product to be on sale, and let's say we want to charge $18, we're then going to take the price, put that in the compare price, and then put 18 in there. Now it will show $22 being the compare at price with a line through it, and then 18 being the updated product price. So it's a little bit confusing or weird to do it that way because you would think you could just put in the sale price instead, but that's not quite how it works. So just make sure you have that correct when you're working through your products if you put them on sale or at a discounted price. Now, inside of pricing, you can also manage international pricing. So that can be different based on each currency or international location. Plus, you also have the cost per item. So if you want to manage your margins within Shopify and the analytics there, we can add in the margin. So let's just say, the cost per item was $8 in this case. It's going to help us to calculate the profit and the margin that we have. And that'll just be very clear in your reporting and your breakdown of sales. Now, heading down to inventory, you can see the first option here is track quantity. So we do want to, in this case, track quantity here, as it is important that we don't oversell our stock. And we want to have, whether a pre-order in place if we do sell out of our stock, or just for it not to be sold because it might be a limited release. And we don't want, the endless customer support emails coming through saying, hey, I bought this item, where is it? And you're having to apologize the whole time. Now, within your settings, you can have different locations. So you might have different warehouse locations based on countries or cities, or you can have, a store inventory and you can have your warehouse inventory. So there's a few options here, but we're just going to go with the shop inventory location for now. And we're just going to add 100 stock units. And then here, we don't want to continue in selling out of stock. We want to make sure there is a hard limit. We're going to keep that as a strict selling point of 100. And then the SKU, so this is the unique identifier. Now, many small business owners don't worry about this at the early stages, but it is something I would suggest doing at the early stages no matter what, and just get used to having it there, as it is super important for reporting and tracking as time goes on. So in this case, I'm just going to stick to a simple SKU, and as it's a classic white t-shirt, so then you can see there's a bit of a structure to these abbreviations here. So for this one being the classic white t-shirt, we're going to go CWT001. Now, everyone has a different structure for this, and there's so many ways you can go about arranging your SKUs, but this is a clear example for now, and that can be another video. We can dive into how to set that up and manage it for your business and your product ranges. Now, heading down to shipping, one of the things here is you can have shipping calculated based on the actual weight of the product. Now, sometimes in these cases with clothing, it's not quite as important as it's all fitted into satchels, but depending on your product, it might be. But in this case, we're just going to add it in anyway. And for this, we're just going to say, 0.25 per kilo. Now, I'm not actually too sure what this one weighs, but don't take my example. Make sure it actually is applicable to your product and don't just make up the number. Now we're going to jump into variants, and a lot of people think variants are very tricky or difficult to manage, but they don't need to be. So let's just click add options like size or color. And then in this case, we're going to select size. Now you can see the option values already has medium in there, but we're going to start off with small, then we're going to go medium, and then we're going to go large. So we're going to click done. And then we can see we now have variants for small, medium, and large. And you can see how they populate within the variants here. And you can see the SKUs have updated too to have different SKUs for each variant. Now you can change these variant SKUs to be more applicable. So you could have S included for small, M for medium, L for large, and that can go on. Or you can keep a number structure to it and do it that way. Now, another popular use case is color. So as this is a classic white t-shirt, we don't need multiple colors. Although what you can do is always have just classic t-shirt and then have multiple variants within this one product. So we could go color and then go white, black, and blue. Then if you were to click done, this would add all of those variants too. And these will now show up as the different toggle options or drop downs, depends on your theme, for the customer select and to choose a different variant. So then this would be, small to medium. So then this will show up a little bit differently as well on the back end. So in this case, I'm going to add these in just for the example, and we're going to see how that changes how you might manage inventory and those sort of things. Now beneath this, you can now see that the variants, there's quite a bit going on here. So we have small with 3 variants and the same for medium and large. We're going to click expand all. And now we can see all of the potential variants here. So obviously if we had 100 originally in stock, it might not be the case for each variant because when we're ordering different products, there's going to be a different number of each size. So depending on the location that you're managing the inventory, you're just going to select that from this drop down. And although yours might not be called shop location, that's just what my one is called on this setup store. Now within here, you can see it's added in 100 of the small white because that's what it's given this SKU for this variant. Although we're going to change this and each one of these is just going to have 10. So we're going to add in 10 for this. But then for the mediums, we actually only got 8. So we're just going to add in the different number for these ones. And then large, we did get 8 for the white, but then we only got 6 for the other colors here. So we're going to add those in too. There we go. So now we've added in the inventory for each of the variants. We can just go ahead and save that while we're here. So now we've got the product set up with all of its variants in there, and each variant now has its individual inventory and SKU as well. Now you might be wondering, I want to make sure there's a different image for that variant. So what you can do is add images on a variant level. So when you change the variant, most themes will give you the option to have the product gallery on the product page, that when you select the different variant, it'll change that first featured image to that variant image. So you can just do that by clicking here or dragging the image in. And that's going to allow you to add an image that's going to be attributed to that particular SKU. Now you're going to have to do that for each one. If you do set up colors first, you can add that variant image in there. And then once you set up sizes, it's going to apply to all of them. But as we did the other way around, we do have to do this step by step or individually. So feel free to go ahead and do that for your product imagery, as it can be a great way just to make it a little bit easier and a little bit less confusing for customers. As if they select black, we want them to see black. We don't necessarily want them to have to click through all the different images to see all those different variant colorings, or if it be different materials or anything like that. Now, if you did have them, this is where you can also add meta fields. So you might have different meta fields for size charts or to do with size and fit, where you might have the model description, anything like that. You can set up meta fields here and have those added in. But in this case, we don't have those. We're keeping it quite simple. And then at the bottom here, you have SEO. So this is how it'll appear on Google. So if we click edit, we can see that there's a classic white t-shirt being pulled through for the page title. And this is how it'll appear. And then you have the meta description that is pulling through from the description itself. And then the URL handle. Now, if you're focused on SEO or just general kind of good practice, I would making sure the meta description is unique and also the URL handle doesn't have things like copy or anything like that, because when you duplicate a product, you'll often see on an e-commerce store, they've included in the URL, you'll see copy or new or anything like that. And that's just because when they've duplicated a product, they haven't actually updated the URL handle. And to be honest, it looks really bad. So you want to make sure you don't have this. And in the page title, you could add a little bit more detail and go men's white t-shirt. And then that way you just have a little bit more keyword optimization. But that again is sort of another video because there's a lot to that. And depending if you want to go for a long tail keyword or a short tail keyword. But moving on from the SEO, one of the last few things here is within the product organization. So what we need to look at here is a product category, which for now, it fits into shirts and tops. So that's great. But you can see Shopify provides a whole list of different categories to choose from. Previously, this was super minimal and there wasn't so many categories. So it was hard to actually fit into one of these, but they have updated this. So there's a lot more to choose from and you'll more than likely fit into one. So make sure you select this one as it is good for things like Google Shopping and those sort of things. Then product type. So in this case, we're going to add t-shirt and this can be your own. So we want to make sure you select product type as that can be used in things like collections and filtering. So that is quite important and keep that consistent across your products so you don't have a billion different t-shirt product types of different spelling. Now the vendor, we're going to change it to, white t-shirt maker. This is just an example, of course, but it can be if you have different vendors for each of your products. This is where you can put the vendor or the brand name in. Collections. For now, we're going to add it to the homepage collection. And then tags, although I would suggest working more so off dynamic collections or automatic collections, where the actual collections have different criteria field that automatically pulls through the products rather than manually managing these. Because at a small scale, it's fine. But once your products get to over 100 or 1,000, it gets very tricky or just time consuming to manage that. And you want to do it based on different criteria. Now, one of the great ways to do that, besides using product type or vendor, is using tags. So you can see here in some of the other example products I have, you can have things like sport, winter, accessory, premium, snow. On this case, we're going to add in the color, which is white. We can go t-shirt, even though you can also use a product type value. We're just going to add that in anyway. And then you can also do things like summer fit, because you might have a collection for, summer fit. But then you might also have a collection for things like basics or maybe sort of minimal too. And then you can see that once you start creating the collections with the different dynamic fields or automated or automatic criteria, t-shirt, and then you can filter by white as well. So there's a few things here, depending on also your filter plugin or setup, you could use, but that also does depend on things like your filtering. Although when you go into filtering, that does depend on how you have that set up, as each sort of plugin or setup has different ways of pulling through product information. But again, that's probably another video, so comment or let me know if you have any questions about that. But just for the collections, this is sort of the fundamentals of what you would need to be able to structure these in a nice way and have that automated approach rather than that sort of manually adding these in to each collection. Now that's basically it for setting up and managing your product and variants inside of Shopify. So we're just going to click save here. And then once you've done that, we can click preview, and that's going to open up the preview, which we can now see we have the product image, we have all the variants here that we can click between, and we have the product description being pulled through. Now managing the design of the product page, I'll save for another video. Although this is all about just setting up and managing your products and variants inside of Shopify. So if you have any questions as you work through or any issues that you stumble across, please let me know and I'm more than happy to help you. Please subscribe if you want to see more of these videos and comment if there's anything in particular you need help with. And I look forward to chatting with you soon.